Good afternoon, everyone. Skip finally
Hello.
made it. He's the AV master over there, so he's like, I don't even know what town you're in right now.
I am still I'm still playing with all my video settings, trying to get it all back to where it needs to be.
Yeah, it's my goal is to be able to operate out of the back of my camper someday and have
Yeah.
nobody notice. So that you see the Tetons back here. I want that to actually be my office.
Yep.
So, welcome to the weekly update this week. We've covered this, I think, 4 years in a row. Now, this particular topic, I was looking back at our history, and it's probably because it's the one that Skip, or one of the ones that Skip finds most passionate of, like proposing versus quoting, like
Yes.
making this little shift in your mentality saves so much time and it costs you
Yeah.
nothing. You don't have to buy a tool. You don't have to like really change a big process. All you gotta do is be lazy.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, and it de-stresses the relationship you have with your clients. I mean, the fact of the matter is they need technology. I mean, it's just an ongoing, churn that goes through most organizations. And if you aren't proactive about it and talking to them well in advance, then the flip side of that is it's always last minute. It's always you need this right now. You're pressuring your clients to buy stuff, and that just doesn't make for a good business relationship. They know they're going to have to buy technology. They know they have to refresh stuff. That is no surprise for them. So help them plan that in the future. And now you're not the bad guy showing up with, this antique server or, network infrastructure that has desperately got to be replaced. But your client's going, can't you make it work? I mean, why are you pestering me about this stuff?
It
All right?
costs too
Flip
much.
that narrative around.
Like those excuses come out, like
Yeah.
that's what happens when the last minute when you go into your mechanic and your car suddenly breaks down. And they just say it's going to cost you $3,000 today to fix this. Yeah,
Mhm.
crap. Now I got to find the money for that. I need my car. Can we do it
Right.
cheaper?
Yeah, I need that.
Think of all the excuses that you'll make when you hear that you blew a head gasket and now it's going to cost $3,000 to replace
Mhm.
your car. And you're gonna be like, okay, is there any way we can do this cheaper? Is all those excuses are the same ones your client gives you for a reason
Mhm.
because they were unprepared for the expense.
Yeah.
Now, if you'd have thought to yourself, like those wise financial planners will say, hey, you should always have $1,000 in your bank account for unexpected expenses.
Mhm.
That way, it's an annoyance rather than a major expense. You'll still do your due diligence, but when you plan a Disney vacation 3 years in advance and it costs you 10 grand,
Yeah.
you're not thinking about you're like, man, this is gonna be expensive, but you spent 3 years preparing your mind, preparing your budget, maybe saving for it, and it's not that big of a deal. So you as a person will drop 10 grand on something that a business would be like, what are you doing to me? Because
Mhm.
you prepared. Now imagine doing that with your clients where you say, hey, look, I'm just going to show you what this is going to cost next year. It's going to cost about $10,000. But if you
Mhm.
do this, we're going to allow your employees to work from home, or we're going to allow you to sell at that trade show you're going to next October. But you've got 12 months to figure it out. Are you okay with spending 10 grand knowing that you're going to have this solution in a year?
Yeah.
And they'll be like,
Well, this
oh,
is this is a bit of a stretch, but take that example, that car example, and I think this will help you really appreciate this perspective from your clients. If your mechanic came to you and said, "Hey, and 387 days, the head gasket on your engine is going to fail. All right, it's going to cost $3,000 to fix." All right, and you were like, "Shoot, okay, 387 days. All right, I do the math, I divide it out. This is what I've got to start setting aside so that when it fails, I can fix it. And when it happens, great, magic there. But you would be okay. now I have to, pay the money out, but I've got it. I've been expecting this. And
Yes.
there isn't going to be that friction between you and the mechanic. You're not gonna be looking at him going, you're really just trying to milk me for more money. What are you trying to go? You've been working with them the whole process. So that's an extreme and kind of silly example, but the fundamentals, the process of that is exactly the same. You've got to work that out with your clients.
Yeah, having that ahead of time and it being a prepared expense in a business is a whole different ball of
Mhm.
wax than you walking up with a quote in hand. And you did great research. You went to
Mhm.
Dell, you went out to AWS or Azure, you spec'd out all these prices, maybe even got a fancy tool that kind of helps you look up these prices, and you got it all laid out.
Mhm.
But guess what? You're still asking them to spend a bunch of money they weren't prepared to spend. And if
Yep.
that's the case, you're going to fight an uphill battle. You're going to get the, well, can't we do this cheaper? Do I really need this? You're going to have all these different excuses come from the client. And you're going to be like, man, how do I get all these excuses handled ahead of time? So you're going to focus on objection handling. You're going to focus
Mhm.
on
Yeah.
how do I make sure it's all lined up ahead of time. So now the client feels guilty that they're not doing these things. So you get this guilt going, but they're still not
Mhm.
buying because the money's not there,
Yep.
and or it's going to be a big disruption to their business. Where if you'd have told them a year ago or 2 years ago, hey, I'm going to be doing this. And that's why one of the tricks that we use at Humanize is depreciation schedules.
Mhm.
Depreciation is this asset you're buying today, you're going to have to replace in 4 years. Not because of warranty, not because of anything, because the asset is depreciated. That is its lifespan.
Mhm.
That is it. After 4 years, we no longer support it. So there is no if, ands, or buts. You need to put it into your budget, and the CFO knows what to do here. Depreciation schedule, they put it into their modeling, and that way, in 4 years, it's going to be in their budget. You don't even have to plan for it.
Yep.
The CFO is already doing it because you said the word depreciation. If you walk into the door and you say, hey, this has a 4-year warranty, the CFO isn't going to put it into their tables. They're going to be like, okay, cool. So we're our risk and our liabilities covered for 4 years.
Yeah. We'll
They're not
just
going to look
renew,
at
right?
asset replacement in 4 years. They're going to look at risk and risk management for 4 years.
Mhm.
And then you're going to come in and say, hey, we need to replace this PC. And they're going to be like, why? Like, well, it's out of warranty. They're
That doesn't
like,
matter. Yep.
that doesn't matter. I can still use a computer, right? How often do you sell your car because it's out of warranty? Now, if you're a Midwesterner like me, you ride that thing until it's in the dirt.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the whole joke is, they'll find you and try to sell you an extended warranty.
Yeah.
None of us care. We don't want the extended warranty.
Yeah.
Because at that point in time, I can fix my own truck. I can take my truck to the
Yep.
mechanic for cheaper than that warranty is going to cost me. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
care. And so your businesses are thinking the same thing. So when you propose, you're preparing your client for an expense. When you
Yes.
use depreciation, that's just a really quick trick to propose in 4 years. It's going to
Yep.
depreciate. You're going to see it come up on the proposal in 4 years. So let's just show you really quick what this looks like in the Humanize IT platform. I got it up here
Well,
somewhere.
Adam, while you're bringing that up, let me talk about another angle on this and planning ahead. It doesn't have to just be assets. So, talking to one of our friends, Tucker, and he was telling me how they've been doing this in their MSP for many years now, and they do a stack audit, that they do a
Yep.
compliance audit. And based on that score, clients may get a surcharge if they're far enough out of compliance. And they set expectations with clients. They sit down, they evaluate them, and they say, look, here's the gap. We're going to have to fix these things, and we've got a time frame to do that in. And if we don't, then you're going to get charged more. Right? It's not a surprise fee. It's not like a speeding ticket, that they're handing out.
Yeah.
They're planning these far enough in advance that their clients can make decisions based on the projects. And the funny part about it is they get to the end of that cycle on many of those, and the clients look at that and go, okay, yeah, that's what we've been planning on. And
Yep.
they just pay the surcharge.
Yeah.
So
It's like
there's more money to be made there if you plan ahead with your clients.
it's like our SOC audits, right? I know I have to pay the piper for our environment to be monitored. I know I have to pay this much. And so I just do. But then there also there's these random people say, hey, can you come do our conference or can you come do the speaking gig? It'll only cost you $10,000. I'm like, I wasn't planning on that this year, you know?
Yep.
But like over here, you see, this is our proposals. Anybody who's done the budgeting in our tool knows these are our proposals, right? So you have this nice little budget here, and then you export it, and it goes into this line item proposal. Why don't we have a nice blue and black, really sexy looking proposal? Because the CFO doesn't want it. They want to print this thing out,
Yep.
and they want the line items. And so what's happening here is this is a ballpark. You should budget about this much for this item. You should budget about this for this item. The reason why a lot of software vendors don't talk about proposals is because there's no money to be made in doing proposals for these software vendors. They want the quote, they want the bid.
Yes.
They want you to use the complicated part of their tool that's going to look up all this information for you and put it in front of the customer. A proposal can be done with, as we always say, a number 2 pencil and a piece of paper. What is this about going to cost? Show me an engineer who can't ballpark a firewall replacement. They don't have to be exact. And this proposal here is going to give you your line items. You're going to have your descriptions of what is this? How is it going to help the company? What's going to be affected by this line item? So that when the CFO comes in here, they can copy and paste depreciation cycles and put it into their spreadsheet. That's it. There's nothing complicated here. This is just a swag. What do you call them? Swag numbers, Skip?
Yeah.
You're just throwing it against the wall and seeing if it's going to fit. And then when it comes to the day, you say, "Hey, I need to drop $90,000 on that OneDrive migration project. This is a big company." And they say, "Oh yeah, we budgeted for that. We approved it last fall. We're ready to go."
Right.
And then the client doesn't balk at that. But if you walked in today and said, "Hey, let's start that OneDrive migration project here next month. It's going to cost about $91,000. And here are all the lineups." I mean, you got to directly quote out. You spent 10 hours building up this quote, what the data migration costs were going to be, what the software costs annually were going to be, the fees and all that stuff. And you go $91,000. The company's going to be like, "Wait a minute. And I've got a budgetary discretionary spend of $50,000 in my line budget. I'm going to have to go through approval processes for this. I'm going to get this in. I know we need to do it, but shouldn't we have done this last year?" Then you'd be like, "Well, we didn't need to replace your software at that time. You're still using WordPerfect 7. Everybody was happy." But now that's end of life. Like it'll no longer be available. Whatever your excuses are, whatever your objection handling is, won't matter right now because the client doesn't have the money. And even if they do have the money, it's going to take them, 3 months to get through the approval process. And you would have been so much better last year. Like it takes us 5-10 minutes to build a proposal.
Oh yeah. I mean, that much.
15-20 hours to build a quote of this size. And I can say with certainty that if you came to me as a corporation, if I was a CIO at a corporation, you walked into me with this one day and said, "Hey, this is what we need to spend in 2024, I'd be like, "See you in 2025.
Yeah.
Now, if you come into 2025 and say, "This is our 2025 budget. I know you're going to do your budget proposals for the CEO and the finance committee in June. Here's what everything's going to cost. We're going to get you to those plans that you had for getting everybody online into Office 365. We're going to get all those depreciated assets replaced, and we're going to get that intranet set up for you. This is what it's going to cost." And I say, "Oh man, it'll be great to get all that stuff done. I can't wait to show this to people. I'll see if I can get the approval from the CEO. I can spend the next 3 months pitching it to them, telling them how this is going to help everybody. And in 2025, we can kick this off."
Yep.
And then when 2025 comes up, you're ready to do the OneDrive quote. You can go ahead and take this entire section you have here, and you can walk over to your quoting office and say, "Hey, I got a $91,000 quote. Make this work." And then the quoting department comes down, looks at your project and says, "What all do we need to do here?" And they can come down and they can look at everything that's attached to that project, and they can give a direct quote. Maybe it'll only be $89,000.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be $93,000, a little bit more. That's an easy sell.
It is.
And you saved yourself a ton of time. Think about all the quotes, Well, I think Skip talks about this. All the quotes
Oh,
that you
I've been
have
waiting. Yes.
are just waiting for approval and will never be approved because either one, it was too much, two, there were too many objections, or three, the client just didn't care.
Yeah. Well, and for my personal perspective on this, because the quotes are not always easy, and there's a lot going on out there to try to make them easier, and maybe they're making some progress, but I know many of you still spend a significant amount of time preparing quotes.
Yeah.
And for me, for many years working in a Cisco shop, some of those quotes were just incredibly complicated. And there was a lot of time for config review and parts review. And that was all time that my engineers weren't working on projects. They weren't closing tickets. And
Yeah.
so I had to take them out of the billing cycle to put them into quoting work, which is hopefully going to close. But I'm still paying the engineer whether the quote gets completed or not. And too many times, way too many times, the clients would glance at that and go, no, we're not interested.
Yep.
And we as a company had lost significant amount of money based on the amount of work that we put in preparing those quotes. So the proposals is going to save you a tremendous amount of money because we're going to be setting expectations. We're going to be getting the first yes really quick. And as we move along, our work in those are much, much higher percentage chance of closing. And so they're much more profitable.
Yep.
We're not wasting our time doing quotes that are never going to close.
Correct. And if you do waste some time on a proposal, it's only like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? This is information that you gathered throughout the year when you had meetings with the client. Oh, yeah, if we do this project, when you do your QBR, you write down, hey, if we did this project, how would that help you? And you work together and you talk about it like, oh, yeah, Susan said if we did this thing, that she would finally be able to hire this person who works in South Carolina because now they can hire remote. Bob said that if you did this, then they could finally do sales at the trade meets that they go to. It's going to increase sales probably by 20% next year. And you put that in your little project that you have, little opportunity in our tool. That way, when you do the line items next year, you've forgotten all about these conversations you had last quarter, 3 quarters ago, but they're there in the proposal saying, hey, it's going to cost about $15,000. But you're going to increase sales by 20% according to Bob because now you can sell at trade meets. You're going to save, $40,000 because now you're going to hire these people over in South Carolina versus hiring them in New York where the salaries are 3 times. So you can put those notes in there, and that the way they're always on the table. And then the proposal is going to say this proposal is for X dollars and it's going to benefit you Y, and it's in your client's own voice. And that's that soft sell. That soft selling where like we're helping you. There's not really a number to put too much of this. And if they want to bulk and say, hey, look, that's $90,000. I really don't have time for that. Like, well, I'll tell you what. What's your discretionary spend? Well, it's 50,000. We can do 45 this year and 45 next year. What we'll do is we'll break it up into 2 phases. Will that help you? Like, oh yeah. Well, in fact, if you can break it up into phases by quarter, it'd be even better. Like, oh, well, yeah, I was going to take an entire year to do the migration anyways. And so you can then adjust things. You didn't quote anything. You just made a proposal. And now you break that into 2. And now when you spend 3 hours quoting it, it's already been approved. It's already been done. So that time isn't wasted. And it won't just sit on the table waiting for approval like you've been doing for the past 20 years. That's not the way things usually work. It's just the way things usually work for MSPs because the channel has you like just ingrained that you need to quote everything because a quoting tool is something that the channel sells.
Yes.
Quotes are something that Dell sells. These are things that they're making money off of you, the MSP. Proposals don't make anybody but you money. They save you time and money and allow you to soft sell your client so that they can make better strategic decisions. And it takes no time at all. And you don't need a special tool for it. We just build it into ours because it's just an easy way to do this stuff. I get so many arguments about depreciation schedules because No one teaches it in our channel. No one does, because there's no money to be made from teaching people how depreciation works.
Well,
Zero.
everyone is so focused on shortening the sales cycle. And trust me, I get it. I mean, long sales cycles are really no fun for anybody. In some ways, this is counterintuitive to that. We're going to actually stretch the
Lengthen.
sales cycles out. But in what we do with that is we make those sales cycles, we just start them earlier. All right.
Yep.
We start them where they need to be started. And I think the problem that people have is they're trying to shorten a cycle that it's not so much how long as is, it's when they started it.
Yep.
And they start those cycles way too late. And that's why there's so much difficulty in them. If you will start them when they need to be started, right, they may be really long, but they will also be really easy. And the final bits of it, kind of the traditional quoting, scoping, config review, all of that stuff will go really, really fast. But it's not so much how long is your sales cycle, it's when are you starting your sales cycle. And I think that's the more appropriate, needle that you need to thread in your organization is when are we going to start this cycle?
Forethought. And guess what? This also makes clients stickier, right?
Yeah.
So let's say we're looking at 2025. Let's say we're looking at June 2025. I can guarantee you, as a corporate employee, when I was doing, I was just a director. Yeah, a nobody. I was thinking out 18 months to 3 years on my IT asset replacement.
Absolutely.
And my IT projects and my IT hires. 3 years, people. That's how far I was thinking at any given time. You start selling today for 5 minutes, putting together a proposal for June of 2025. Get that in front of your client, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm really excited about that." So you're going to build out this thing. You've got this project ready to go for me, and it's going to help us out intensely. Now the client's like, "Cool, we're going to do that." Some other MSP comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to work with you in 2025. Here's what we're going to do for you." They're going to be like, "No, I've already got projects lined up. We're already under. We've got things lined up for till 2026 with this MSP. Well, they're not going anywhere because I'm not going to redo this entire project scope." Like, well, we can do it cheaper. Tell you what, no, because I'm not going to redo the entire project scope with you.
Yep.
I do not have time for that. And so you make yourself stickier because you're helping them plan out that next year, 2 years. They don't need to be under a 3-year contract, but if they have the work laid out for 3 years, might as well be under a 3-year contract.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's how proposing works, people. It's not rocket science. It's not something that you need to take an entire class on. This 20-minute session is all you need. Instead of going to quote and getting an exact dollar amount, getting the number of sticks of RAM, looking up the size of hard drive they need, just say, "Hey, look, this is going to cost about $1,500 per asset." Then say, "We don't need to do this for a year. It's okay, but I wanted to get this in front of you so that when you do your budget cycle, you already have your bid." And then your client's gonna be like, "Cool, let me go ahead and talk to the CEO about this." There's no rush to buy, but then next year when you're ready to go, the sales process can happen in a week because
that's it.
it's been
It's
pre-approved.
fast. Yep.
Pre-approved. You've been pre-approved. If you went to buy a house, the same thing. We all walk in with a pre-approval. We go to the bank and say, "How much can I afford?" The bank says, "Here's how much you can afford. We will pre-approve you for this much." And then you go buy the house with your pre-approval in hand. It's no different. Like, you're asking these companies to spend a lot of money. The smaller the company, the more money they have to worry about. Or the less money they have to worry about. That discretionary funding goes down. So like a small mom and pop, their discretionary fund might only be like $500.
Yeah.
Bigger shop,
But
it's $50,000, $100,000. So,
and we go into this a lot more, and I won't belabor the point here with a whole nother tangent, but even your smaller companies probably have more to spend on technology than what you expect.
Yep.
It's all about how you position it. So we'll talk about that one more some other time, but there are some really good opportunities for you and your smaller customers.
Yep. I tell the story all the time that I have taken $1,500 MRR contracts and pumped them up to 9,000 MRR because I prepared, and I gave them time to absorb and find a strategy. You can do this too. It does not require a special tool. It just requires a good relationship and forethought.
There you go.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I look forward to seeing you all next week.